Alright, if I had to choose one lens and one lens only, this would be it right here. The 24-105 by Sony, it's an f4, but it goes as wide as 24 and as tight as 105. This lens is lightweight, packs a punch, and is perfect for a one lens setup. So today I'm going to share with you the top reasons why I think this lens is perfect as a one lens setup, and I'm also going to go over why some people might not want to use this lens, but go ahead, stick around to find out at the end of the video. Alright, so if you're someone who likes making videos or photos and you want to use it for YouTube, business, or just personal work, finding the right lens is probably a very important decision that you have to make because they're not cheap and it's something that you're going to use for a long time. Over the years, I've tried almost every single Sony lens and I keep coming back to the 24-105. And here's why. So my first reason is probably the most obvious one, and it's probably the main reason why most people actually use this lens, and it's because it has such a wide range. So the focal range you got as wide as 24, which is like great for landscape shots. I can even use it for vlogging if I wanted to. I just kind of have to extend my arm out. It's not the most comfortable thing, but you can get it done with this one lens, especially if you don't want to carry a bunch of lenses around. And then if you wanted to switch into like taking portraits or just something a little tighter, maybe like 50, you have that option. And if you want to get those crispy, nice detail shots, the 105 works perfectly for that. And being able to have that whole range like that, it's like carrying multiple lenses in one. It's definitely my go-to B-roll lens, whether that's for client work or personal work. I've taken it for traveling, I've taken it for sports, I've taken it for just casually going out with friends or going to new places. You really can't go wrong with this one. You can bring this anywhere. Now, if you're shooting real estate or you're trying to show a very tight environment and make it bigger, this might not be the one that you need because you're probably gonna want something like a 16 or even wider, but I feel like anything besides that, you're pretty good on the wide end. And then on the tight end, even though I did say I used it for sports, it's not the absolute best, and it really depends if this is a live event or it's a staged shoot. Because if it's a live event and you're on like a basketball court or a football field, you're probably gonna want something that can zoom in a lot more than that. All right, reason number 2. OSS. So this is optical steady shot, which means the lens has stabilization built. So this will make your shots a little smoother, especially if you're shooting handheld, whether that's for photo or video. I think this one comes in clutch because when I'm shooting at 105, even though it's like a very punched in shot, I can still like pan very smoothly and there's really no jitters. You can see, I'll post some videos right here where you can see it's pretty steady even though I'm doing all of this handheld with these super tight shots. And since most of the updated Sony bodies, like past 2020, they all have pretty good image stabilization in the body, and when you pair it with this lens, you're almost getting, extra smooth footage. I've brought this lens on day trips and I've shot fast action dog sports with it, and I've had no problem with getting the shot. So you can't go wrong with this one. Fast action, slow action, whatever you need, it'll work for both. All right, and reason number 3, even though it is a zoom lens with giant range, it's pretty compact and lightweight for what it can do. So what I like doing, I like using a single body paired with this lens, and I put it in this tiny little shoulder bag that I have. I'm gonna show you guys because this bag is tiny and you would never even guess I have like a full camera setup in there. And it's easy for me when I go out with people because it doesn't look super obvious, like, oh, I got all this stuff with me. I'm not carrying a backpack. I hate carrying a backpack. I want to carry the least amount of things possible unless it's a staged shoot where I do need to bring everything. But if I'm just going out, or if it's a simple shoot where I know I don't need every single lens, then I can just fit it all in that little bag. So if I'm out all day, the easiest thing for me to do is just to carry a minimal setup, so I don't have to worry about all this stuff and just be in the moment and enjoy my time with family or friends. Now, as much as I love this lens, it's definitely not perfect. So a lot of photographers and a lot of videographers, they are not a fan of it for a couple of reasons. So let's start with the first one. First reason why people probably don't like this lens or they don't even want to buy it is because it's an f4. So why is the f4 a big deal? So most people who get zoom lenses, you're probably going to get something like 2.8, or if you have a prime, you're going to get a 1.4 or 1.8. So the f4 means you're not going to get as much of a blurry background and you're not going to get as much light coming in. So it's not as good for low light, and you're gonna get less depth when it comes to your shots. So unless you're shooting in super dark conditions, I don't think the f4 matters that much. And especially if you pair it with, modern Sony bodies, most of the low light in the camera is already pretty good. So you could most likely bump your ISO to match it, or if you have a A7S III, ZVE1, or FX3, you can bump it all the way to 12,800, and this f4 no longer matters for bodies like that. As for the bokeh and blurry background, if you know how to manipulate your space and your subject, you can still get that blurry background, especially with the 105. I think it's actually comparable to a 70 at a 2.8. So the background's still pretty blurry, and if you set your subject far away from your background, of course, you're gonna get that. To me, I think it only really matters if you're shooting in like dark-ish spaces and you really need that 2.8, then yeah, this f4 probably is not for you. Now, the other thing that I don't think I see other people mention, but me and a couple friends have owned this lens before, and I think we've all come to the collective agreement that it's definitely not as sharp as other lenses. But for me, since I'm primarily a video shooter, having it slightly softer isn't that big a deal to me anyways. I have a pro mist on this lens that I'm shooting with right now to make my image not as sharp. So for video, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But if you're trying to get like extra sharp photos, then this might be a deciding factor for you. However, even though the image isn't as sharp, you really can't tell unless you really zoom in. I'll show some examples of some photos that I've taken with the A7S III with this lens, and they still look super good. So let me show some examples that I've taken with this lens, and just keep in mind the A7S III only has 12 megapixels. So this camera is definitely not the best camera for photos. So if you're shooting with anything besides a A7S III, ZVE1, or an FX3, your photos will probably look sharper because you have a higher megapixel count than these 3 video cameras. So yeah, this lens definitely has some drawbacks, but in my opinion, I think it's definitely great for video shooters. And then for photo shooters, questionable. All right, so for now, I'll let you guys decide based on what I told you. But for me, I would definitely say the positives outweigh the negatives, and this is a timeless piece right here. I've bought and sold many lenses, and this one has stayed the whole time. All right, to sum it up, the 24-105 f4 is definitely one of my favorite lenses. It's great for its versatility, the OSS for stabilization, and it's just a fun lens that's convenient to carry around. So if you're looking for your first lens, or if you're just looking for a versatile lens, I can't recommend this one enough. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Have you used this lens? Have you been thinking about it? Or would you recommend or not recommend it to someone? But as always, leave it in the comments, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.